on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, we cover everything from the Dunkley by-election to genocidal messages projected on a London landmark. And we'll have the latest from the US, including President Donald Trump meeting with the Argentinian Trump, Javier Milei. And didn't this have lefties losing it far and wide?
President!
And talking about lefties losing it, I've got plenty to show you tonight. Plus, I'll catch up with the man who brought us Dog Girl.
You see yourself as an actual dog, right? You said you like to go play fetch.
Woof, yes.
But first, let's have a look at Albo's weekend, from dancing to Taylor Swift to hobnobbing with billionaires at the Pratt Estate, where Katy Perry was paid around $2 million to perform for an hour. That was on Saturday night. This is what Airbus was up to on Friday night. You know, he had an opportunity to give away those tickets during one of his regular vapid radio spots, but the PM loves nothing more than a freebie, whether it's the Australian Open, Katy Perry at a private show, or Tay-Tay, as he calls her, on Friday night. As reported in the Herald Sun, Albo was confronted by a desperate Taylor Swift fan on radio. Natalie begged him to give up his ticket. It was a tense moment for the leader of the nation, writes James Campbell. How would he answer? The three options presented themselves. A, absolutely, you have it. Upon mature reflection, I realise I'm a 60-year-old bloke who shouldn't be jumping on these sort of bandwagons. In fact, not only can you have it, but I will make a solemn promise to the Australian people that I will stop embarrassing myself by calling Taylor Swift Tay-Tay. Option B, get nicked. And option C, sorry, but I can't. I can't give you the ticket. I made poor Jodie sit there for hours with my credit card. At one point, she had 5 screens open and she'd kill me if we didn't go. Now, as James Campbell writes, obviously, in reality, there was no option C because, well, that would have required him to have actually paid for a ticket himself. So instead, poor Natalie got a polite version of get nicked. I'm going on Friday night and I am a real Swiftie. But the fun wasn't over for Albo. He jetted down to Melbourne the following day to join the likes of Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen, his Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen, and the big end of town, including ANZ's painfully woke boss Shane Elliott, for an exclusive invite-only gathering at the Pratt Estate to watch Katy Perry. This is what $2 million gets you. Now, why was Albo there? Why was Chris Bowen there? Well, according to the PM, his presence there was creating jobs. This is what he said. He said, the good news that I got last night from many of the businesses was that they're expanding their operations. That means more jobs here, and it means our economy is more resilient here as well. Who is he kidding? Joining me now to go over the day's top stories is Deputy Executive Director of the IPA, Daniel Wild. Dan, does Albo realise he's Prime Minister? He's not some Instagram influencer who needs to be at every big event in town?
Well, the problem he's got here is a pattern of behaviour. I don't think anyone's saying that the Prime Minister can't go to a concert and enjoy himself. That's perfectly fine. But remember back to the Voice to Parliament debate, he was at a Midnight Oil concert with the Voice Treaty Truth T-shirt dancing around. Now, that came back to haunt him many times. He was, of course, at the tennis when there was the serious issue of violence in the Alice Springs. and now he's at a Taylor Swift concert and at a private, millionaire, billionaire function in the context, of course, of the Dunkley by-election, but also the cost of living problems that Australians are facing. So I think when you put all of those together, it creates the impression, now this may be fair or unfair, but it creates the impression that he's really out of touch with what most people in the country are going through at the moment.
Well, especially just jetting down from Sydney after going to Taylor Swift's concert to go to a billionaire's property to watch with 200 other people, top end of town, to watch Katy Perry perform for an hour. Apparently she was paid $2 million. It's just completely foreign way of life for the average person. He paints this picture that he grew up in a commission house with a single mum, and he's had the struggle. And I think Australians would embrace anyone who goes through that and achieves something. But at a time when cost of living pressures are biting, to watch the Prime Minister, Labor's socialist left faction Prime Minister, carry on like this, I don't know if it passes the pup test.
I don't think it does. And I think Albanese, for someone who's anti-monarchy, is astonishingly ceremonial in his behaviour. He's not really someone who drives outcomes. He's someone who sort of exists. He likes to preside over things. He likes to be associated with the big end of town of successful people in the chairman's lounge and so forth. But I think Australians are starting to see that Albanese as Prime Minister is not perhaps somebody who's really interested in or capable of driving better outcomes for the community. He likes the showmanship associated with being Prime Minister, but perhaps not much else.
Well, you mentioned Chairman's Lounge. I've forgotten all about his son being granted membership. Again, it's something that's normally reserved for captains of industry or parliamentarians. Now, let's go to the Dunkley by-election, and Labor and the rest of the left are in uproar because, Daniel, Advance Australia is active and employing some of the tactics that leftist groups have long used to push their agenda. But they can't cop it when there's some coming back the other way. Well, why do you see there's this reaction where they describe Advance Australia's actions as a threat to democracy itself?
Well, it's rules for thee and not for me when it comes to the left. I mean, they for years have benefited from Get Up, from the unions and other taxpayer-funded organisations or organisations which have charity status that have tipped the balance towards the left. Now, that's fine. They're allowed to do that. But so too can the centre-right. And I think the voice to Parliament changed everything for the centre-right. That's when Advance Australia sort of came onto the scene in a big way.
Yep.
And their success and capabilities in that context was undeniable. So it was inevitable that this was going to parlay into day-to-day electoral politics. And Dunkley is really sort of ground zero for how this new model of campaigning will work on the centre-right. I think it's important because it balances up the scales. It means that a lot of mainstream Australians will have a voice in debate outside of just the Liberal Party or the political process. So, like I say, it'll be interesting to see how this goes, but I think it's an important balancing of the system.
Now, we've seen the release of criminals from immigration detention. It's become a major issue for Labor. In the US, crimes committed by illegal immigrants is also a massive issue, particularly when the Biden administration has overseen more than 7 million enter illegally. The latest case to outrage the community is the murder of nursing student Laken Hope Riley, allegedly murdered by an illegal immigrant. But the media, including the Associated Press, referred to the man simply as Athens resident Jose Antonio Ibarra. Daniel, this case isn't isolated. The media seem to go out of their way to conceal pertinent facts they deem inconvenient to their preferred narrative.
Well, there's a real problem here, which is even the most left-leaning of states and the left-leaning of cities, New York, is starting to have serious reservations about what is happening in the United States regarding migration. I know Trump has said that he's considering doing a campaign event in New York City. Now, I don't think he can necessarily win New York State at the next election, but it shows you how bad things must be in the US. And this gets to the bigger issue. We're seeing this in Australia and across Western nations, which is when communities don't feel like they're in control of the migration program, that is when you start to get a fracturing in society and real concerns begin to emerge. We saw last year 1 million migrants brought into Australia. Now, they were done through the legal mechanism, which is the good news. But again, the bad news is that this is not being planned for and it's not being done by and large with the consent of the community.
Well, no, if we had a referendum on migration levels, I think the results would be even clearer than the Voice referendum. But neither side wants that because both Labor and Liberals seem to want this big Australian model for us. Whether, Labor obviously wants to be bigger, but both of them rely on those high immigration numbers for economic activity. Now, staying in New York, the Democratic governor of New York appeared on MSNBC to say her sanctuary city is overwhelmed thanks to the massive influx of illegal immigrants.
We are being so affected. We have 175,000 migrants who came here. They came here for a better life. They came here for a job. But our city and its resources are absolutely overwhelmed. We need a break.
Daniel, of course, she blames Republicans for Biden's policies. These blue states and blue cities want to break from the very policies that they voted for. This is the impact of the Democrats' policies.
That's right. I mean, the chickens are coming home to roost for these sanctuary cities. They've done more than anyone else to encourage the illegal influx of migration. No one's saying that you can't have proper managed legal migration. What they're saying is it's got to be controlled and planned for. You look at millions of people that are coming through the US southern border. They don't know where these people are from. They don't know where they're going. There's no way of tracking them. So you can imagine if you're not just in Texas or Arizona, they're moving all the way up into New York. If you're a family living there, you can't have any assurance that there's proper safety procedures in place to keep track of these migrants. Now, some of them may be genuine asylum seekers and they should be dealt with accordingly, but clearly many are not. And this is a huge issue.
Well, yeah, we've got a breakdown. We'll talk about this later in the week. There's a very interesting breakdown of what countries these illegal migrants are coming from. And the whole notion of seeking asylum, when it is clear the overwhelming majority, if not almost all of them, are economic migrants. They're there for a better life, that's true. They're there because there's more prosperity and opportunity there, but that is not how a migration program is supposed to operate. This story, I've got to say, I thought was a joke. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced additional support for Ukraine over the weekend, but it was this measure that had people scratching their heads. Canada will provide millions for, and I'm quoting here, gender-inclusive demining for sustainable futures in Ukraine. That includes, again, I'm quoting, establishing a gender and diversity working group to promote gender transformative mine action in Ukraine. $4 million devoted to that, Daniel. I'm having trouble understanding what that's actually achieving. Please explain it to me.
I can't even understand what those words mean when they're put together. I mean, it's difficult to know what's woke and what's a joke these days, because the further you go down this rabbit hole, the weirder it gets. And this is the problem. When you carve everything up by identity politics, when you carve everything up by gender or race or ethnicity, you end up with these plainly ridiculous policies and ideas, and you have normal people that look at this that go, well, what does this mean? Isn't the main job to make sure people are safe and get rid of the mines? Why does it matter what their gender is? So my hope out of...
So demining means we're getting rid of mining. It's not actually mining activity. I'm not even sure, is this promoting mining or getting rid of mines in a non-binary way? It is.
I thought it meant like land. I thought it referred to land mines, but maybe it is actual open cut mines.
Maybe it's
but who knows?
Land mines and not mining. Justin Trudeau needs to give us a few bit more details on this bit of craziness. Now, before you go, I don't know if you're a WWE fan, but they were in Perth. It was quite a coup for the city. It's a huge thing, the WWE. Yet one of the WWE stars was not too happy to be in Perth. I think he was playing a heel here. Logan Paul was ruthless in bagging the city.
This place sucks, guys. I said, when they told me we were coming to Perth, I said, hey, we got to go to Sydney instead. I mean, even Taylor Swift went to Sydney instead of this dump. You Google, like, the top 10 things to do as a tourist in Perth. And number 1 is go visit an island full of rats. Not so different from you people, huh? We legit in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of the ocean. I swear to God, I'd rather be stranded in the middle of the ocean.
I thought thought it was funny, but the WA Deputy Premier wasn't too happy. She's responded on Facebook. We won't bother getting into all that. But, I mean, this is just part of the magic of the WWE. Are you a fan?
Yeah, I used to watch it a lot, actually. Back in the days of the Ultimate Warrior and those types. So I think it's sort of...
The golden days.
Those were the golden days. But, yeah, I think you're right. He's playing the heel clearly there, and they do it well. I mean, I think the WWE, whether you like it or not, is one of the greatest entertainment sort of packages put together. So he did a good job at riling up the crowd and playing the part. I don't know whether the Deputy Premier understood that it was all a part of the act or not, but I think he's done a pretty good job of his acting and so forth there.
I think so too, and Rottnest Island is a delightful place, so I'm glad he's raised awareness for the island with the overgrown rats. Daniel Wild, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Hollywood and royal reporter Kinsey Schofield. Let's start with Prince Harry's book, Spare. It outlined many of his cocaine, magic mushroom and weed-fueled antics. He was a party prince once, but lawyers for the Biden administration are insisting this is not really proof he took any drugs. A Washington think tank is suing the US to release the details of Harry's visa application, arguing it is of immense public interest. When applying for a visa, applicants must disclose their past drug use. Sources close to the Duke insist he answered truthfully. Kinsey, did he answer truthfully? Did he admit to this illicit drug use? Or is, as the Biden administration suggests, he made up all those details about taking cocaine and other drugs to sell books? It wasn't actually true.
Well, I obviously the Biden administration didn't watch the many interviews he gave to promote this book, Rita. Remember when he sat down with that doctor and they got into the weird hallucinogenics that made him see the truth or whatever, however he described it at the time. Harry not only wrote about it in this book, but he's spoken about it in interviews I think that we might be one step closer to getting the answer. The Heritage Foundation said they were confident after the judge said that he was going to take a look at those papers and determine whether or not it was of value, and of value to the public, because it was only a few weeks ago that Prince Harry told Good Morning America that he was considering becoming a citizen. So if that's the case, American citizens do want to know, did he lie on his application? Did he get any special treatment because he's a prince? A judge might look at the information and say, you know what? Americans deserve to know the truth here.
If they do decide he lied on that application, he wasn't entirely forthcoming about his illicit drug use, what are the consequences? Is it a fine? Could he be deported? What could happen?
Realistically, he could be deported. That is what would happen to a typical Joe Schmo. However, he's Prince Harry. And this is the Biden administration who has gone out of their way to protect him. And so I would say worst case scenario, he could be deported. But is that a reality? Not with Joe Biden in the White House.
Well, it could be different with Donald Trump back in the White House, because he has said that he wouldn't protect Prince Harry. He's also had a swipe at the Biden administration for the way they've handled this issue. That's a scary prospect for Harry and Meghan. If he's not a citizen by the time Trump is back in the White House, if he is back in the White House, he could find himself deported.
That's right. Trump said, I wouldn't protect him. He betrayed the Queen. That's unforgivable. He said that Harry would be on his own if he were in charge, and that he believes that the Biden administration, and it sounds like Harry's family, has been far too gracious with Harry after some of his betrayals. It's interesting to me because Harry and Meghan refused to meet with Trump when Trump went to London to see the Queen. They made themselves unavailable. In a different instance, Harry thought he was talking to Greta Thunberg on the phone and was actually talking to YouTube pranksters, where he was insulting Trump. And then when you listen to some of the ideas he pitched to Spotify for his podcast that never came to fruition, one of them was a sit down with Trump. So the lack of self-awareness, the audacity these two have, it's just hilarious. So yeah, I'm with Trump. Figure it out yourself, Harry.
Now, Kinsey, you've brought this story to my attention. One of the BLM co-founders has slammed Taylor Swift fans as racists and Travis Kelce's led Chiefs winning the Super Bowl as some sort of a right-wing white supremacist conspiracy. Tell me about this. I mean, Taylor Swift is of the left. She's made her support of Biden clear, and Travis Kelce is no right-wing figure. This whole conspiracy theory seems a bit shaky on the face of it.
I mean, just talk about somebody that didn't do her homework. Melina Abdullah, that's right, co-founder of BLM, bizarrely unloading criticism on Taylor Swift and Kelce fans on X, calling them full-fledged, violent, white delusionists, proclaiming virtually everything is racist, which is, interesting coming from her because this conversation that she's having by herself on X sounds pretty racist. But you're right, this digital meltdown started February 11th when she tweeted, "Why do I feel like it's slightly racist to be a Taylor Swift fan?" I mean, I don't know why you feel that way. You might want to look in the mirror. But hours later, after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, she said, "Why do I feel like this is some right-wing white supremacist conspiracy? Boo." Now, as you just said, Taylor Swift is one of the most outspoken Democrats in pop culture history, or, at least pop star history. She makes Bob Dylan nervous. Meanwhile, Travis is like the poster boy for Pfizer. So this woman could not be more factually incorrect. It's a very bizarre digital meltdown. Hopefully she starts deleting soon.
Oh, yes. And Travis Kelce also famously did a Bud Light ad right after their absolute disaster with the trans activist. And that Bud Light ad did not go down well with conservatives either. They are not fans of Travis Kelce, the celebrity. They might like his football team, but they're not fans of his. But this is really interesting, Kinsey, because I remember not long ago, probably thinking back around 2016, 2017, Taylor Swift did get a lot of criticism. I remember writing about it at the time because back then she wasn't political. She just did not share her political views. She said, "I'm a pop star. It's not my job to tell people how to vote." And I thought that was actually admirable. Even if, whether she's conservative or left, it's good to stick to what you're good at. But she was called some sort of a white supremacist Barbie, and all sorts of other ugly narratives surrounded her, until she came out and was an outspoken pro-Democrat, pro-Hillary Clinton, pro-Biden activist. And now those voices have been silenced, not this BLM co-founder. So do you think she got bullied into getting involved in politics with all that bad press she unfairly copped? I think it was around 2017, 2016.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it was that, yes, because I remember those headlines. I remember that the kind of the Redditors and some of the conversations that were happening around it. But I also think she had a really bad reputation for being the girl that always had a famous boy on her arm, and she wanted to be taken seriously, and she wanted to be seen as an adult and a woman. And I wonder how much that had to do with it as well, wanting to be taken seriously as a grown-up and not just the girl who constantly is with the famous boy.
Well, the famous meme is, she is notorious for picking the wrong blokes. She has sold tens of millions of albums singing about picking the wrong blokes, and she picked Joe Biden as well. So I don't know how much of a win that is for the Democrats, but she's certainly a force of nature. Just before you go, we spoke about Ginger Spice and her husband's troubles. The Red Bull Formula One boss is facing all sorts of ugly allegations, and it's now been revealed that Jerry has unfollowed Victoria and David Beckham. Why would that be? Have they said anything against her husband? Have they not been adequately supportive of her during her what is a very difficult time for the former Spice Girl?
I mean, we're hearing increasing reports that Jerry is overwhelmingly upset over these allegations by a Red Bull employee and humiliated by this entire ordeal. Now, Jerry, it's reported she did unfollow the Beckhams and then refollowed the Beckhams. So maybe after those initial headlines, there was some outreach, but it's believed that it was due to a lack of support. The Beckhams are well respected. And, maybe she felt like they could have taken up for her in a public way more. But again, Christian has denied denied the allegations and told media he is confident he will remain in his position. Can his marriage survive the drama? I think that's a whole other story.
Kinsey Schofield, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time this evening. Coming up, a massive edition of Lefties Losing It. And later in the hour, we'll cross to London, where a genocidal message has been projected onto Big Ben. You're watching the Rita Panahi Show, and now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And nothing has set lefties off more in the past 48 hours than the Argentinian Trump, Javier Milei, meeting the OG. If you want to trigger the lefty in your life, just send them this clip.
President! Make Argentina great again.
Let's go to Lefties Losing It headquarters, MSNBC, where former Democrat Senator Claire McCaskill was having this mini meltdown.
It is ridiculous that the New York Times fact-checked Joe Biden on something. I mean, he vomits lies. Trump vomits lies. And every day, over and over and over again. And it's just ridiculous that the New York Times is doing a fact-check on Biden while they let Trump...
How crazy do you have to be to think the leftist New York Times isn't left enough and that the current US president should not even be fact-checked? Now, another blast from the past with this important message.
I am offended that our children are not receiving affordable gender reassignment surgery along with hormone blockers and access to abortions. This alone is a threat to our democracy.
Now, every week I speak to Douglas Murray, and a regular topic for discussion is the West's suicidal stupidity, the way it has championed self-loathing. Well, what would happen if there was another major world war? Who's going to fight for countries they hate?
If UK was to go to war, would you join the military?
No. I'm not from the country, so no.
First of all, I'm not a UK citizen, I'm an immigrant.
I'm Welsh?
No, unfortunately not. I'm not from this country originally, you know?
No. We're Irish,
We don't like the UK military.
No, thank you.
Where are you from?
Brazil.
Do you live here?
Yes.
Would you go to war for this country?
No.
I'm Pakistani, so...
Are you a resident?
I'm a resident. I've got dual nationality.
You guys live in the UK?
Yeah, we do.
Would you join the military?
No. We're not from this country.
If they say it's compulsory, what would you do?
I'll just go back to Egypt. Go back to my country. No, I'll just go back to my country.
And good news, folks, some new pronouns have just dropped.
My pronouns. So, of course, we have he, him, his, himself, and they, them, theirs, themselves. And then we also have void, void self, end, ender, enders, end, ender self, death, deaths, death self, pix, pixel, pickles, pix, pixel, pixels, pixel self, vial, vials, vial self.
Pixels, that's a cute one. I'm a pixel self. I might go with that for a couple of days, see how it feels. Now let's hear from this young lass making an important point.
Lesbians and trans men do not owe digestible concepts of our identities to other queer people. We use reductive, pithy, simplistic phrases for political power. Phrases like, trans men are men, lesbians are not attracted to men. These statements are true enough in the context of the cis heteropatriarchy that they're meaningful to help us get human rights.
Powerful stuff. Now, we started with Trump derangement syndrome. Let's end with more of the same. Here, a young woman employs the tactics of the demented left who scream racism and white supremacy without ever backing up their claims.
Are you voting for Trump? Yep. White supremacist. How? How can you say that? How can I say if you vote for Donald Trump, you're a white supremacist? How? How? Because you support that man in office. That's not an argument. I'm gonna need proof that makes me a white supremacist. You're gonna have to break down the argument.
That's not my job to say that.
You just accused me of being a white supremacist. You should be able to back that up.
Are you voting for Donald Trump?
I sure am.
That's my proof.
Are you voting for Joe Biden?
Yes, I am.
Then you're a pedophile.
No.
Yes, you are.
A pedophile.
You're a pedophile.
How?
You like to sniff kids.
Joining me now is YouTuber and founder of Rattlesnake TV, Jake Julius. Jake, we played one of your clips recently in Lefties Losing It, and it went viral all over again, well over 1 million views in a few days. We'll get to Dog Girl shortly, but you recently spoke to a man that many Trump supporters, indeed I'd say the majority of Trump supporters, want as his VP, his vice president. Tell me what you made of Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Rita. I mean, Vivek was a very interesting man to talk to. I've covered him on my channel over a number of months now, and we've had millions and millions of views. And the thing that I would say about Vivek is that I think that he's emblematic of kind of the new age politician. I think that we're entering into an era now where you have that entrepreneur style politician, the intoxicant, the personality, the person who can go on there and debate people on CNN and NBC and absolutely wipe the floor with them. And Vivek is just that guy. He's got an intoxicating sort of presence about him. It shows when you interview him as well.
And he's almost always the smartest man in the room, but he's not arrogant about it. What do you think the chances are, you're in the US at the moment, of him ending up as the VP pick? A lot of people are in Trump's ear saying he's not a good option. What's your feeling?
My feeling is that Vivek Ramaswamy would be an unbelievable VP, but the question really is, would he be the most intelligent choice if they were to have to run up against Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom? Because I think that Trump would beat Biden if it was a fair and democratic election, that is, no matter what. However, if the Democrats were to come and roll out Michelle and Gavin, I think that it might work in Trump's favor a little bit more to have somebody who's a little bit more of a cool, calm sort of presence, perhaps a female, maybe somebody like Dr. Ben Carson. So I think the politically intelligent thing to do if he was to go up against them would be one of those options. However, Vivek is the guy who can come in and knows the Constitution in and out, knows all of the history, and he's the kind of person that Trump could have a high-level idea and Vivek could come underneath him and really sort of make everything happen at the ground level. So it would be a formidable duo.
Oh, absolutely. Now let's get to the funny stuff. We all remember Dog Girl.
So you're saying that you would like a gentlemanly man, somebody who courts you, takes you on a date, all of these sorts of things?
Absolutely.
I'm a little bit in two minds here because I can hear what you're saying, but then I can see that you're dressed as a cat.
I'm a dog,
and you call yourself a dog.
Woof, yes.
Do you think that that might be a deterrent for a man who is more traditional if you're dressing like a dog?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm not.
So when you look at a relationship, are you looking at like a pet owner type relationship, or like two dogs in the relationship, or what's your ideal?
A partner who loves and respects me and sees me as an equal that I am.
But you see yourself as an actual dog, right? You said you like to go play fetch.
Woof, yes.
So how does that tie into your relationship? Like, what are you looking for if you're a dog?
I'm looking for somebody to throw me a ball and then also say, oh, hey, I appreciate you, you know.
Jake, is she for real? Is she punking all of us? What's the story there?
I wish that I could say that she wasn't for real, but unfortunately, Rita, woof, yes, she was real. She really did think that she was a canine. And if I had a stick there, I would have thrown it, but didn't have one on me, so it was a rough night at the office.
Very good. Do these people, should we feel sorry for them? Do they have a problem, a problem that needs professional help, or are they just chronic attention seekers?
Chronic attention seekers, yes, Rita, but I'm not sure if you've heard of the simppocalypse that's happening. It's an apocalypse of simps on the internet, which is men who will go and pay these women lots of money to basically do what they call cosplay, where they dress up like animals or dress up like dogs or dress up like some sort of a sci-fi figure, and then they'll just watch them live their lives live on stream, and then they'll give them lots of money. So you can only imagine the sort of things that it does to somebody's ego when somebody's paying you to sort of be a dog. So maybe somewhere down there, it's not entirely true, this sort of facade, but unfortunately, it's totally enabled by these thousands of men. I'd like to know who they are on the internet, paying them thousands of dollars.
I am not across that phenomenon, and frankly, news of it disturbs me. Now, you do travel around a fair bit. You talk to folks and get their views on current issues, and it is apparent from some of your videos that this woke mind virus is only really visible in some countries. Tell me about what you found in places like South Korea, Taiwan, and countries through South America.
Obviously, it's a lot worse in places like America, and then there are other European countries where it's pretty bad as well. But if you go to places like South Korea and Japan, for example, you have to understand that in a place like Japan, there has to be some sort of order to the society. You can't really go around saying that, you know, you're a man if you're a woman or vice versa, because in Japan, they have such a massive population and things run at like to the second that if there was to be that sort of cultural disorder, everything would kind of fall apart. So it's very frowned upon. It's very stigmatized. They have some very positive shaming of these types of behaviors, which we're lacking a little bit over here. We enable it a little bit too much. But I will, however, say that in some of the more conservative countries, like Hungary, for example, there are these little color revolutions that appear to be happening where the woke mind virus is taking over the universities, which is very concerning with these beautiful Christian European countries.
Jake, I know you're currently trying to work your way through the American immigration system. It's quite a difficult process when you're doing it legally. It can be a long, arduous process, costly too. How does it feel watching just millions cross that southern border illegally? Have you considered perhaps that as a method if you want to get into the US and stay there permanently?
I've heard there's some good TikTok videos, Rita, with some locations that you can go to and sort of burrow your way under or whatever it is that they do. But yeah, no, I've definitely considered it. I mean, if I just get myself sort of caught, then they'll just catch and release, and I'll be a citizen, and I'll just delay the process. But no, to be honest, I look at that and I think this is the greatest empire that the world has ever known. And America is the greatest superpower that the world has ever known. They do some of the greatest military feats that you can imagine. And you're trying to tell me that they can't secure their southern border? Give me a break.
Jake, Julius, thank you so much for your time this evening, and look forward to featuring another one of your videos in Lefties Losing It. I think we need to know more about Dog Girl. Perhaps, I don't know, you could go out on a date with her and then see how it all works.
Yeah, to be honest, from the first impressions, I don't think it was my type of lady, but we'll see, Rita. Maybe I'll put the feelers out.
Coming up next, we cross to London where there are dire warnings about the Islamist lobby. Connor Tomlinson is up next. Welcome back. Last week, a genocidal message was projected onto one of the UK's most famous landmarks, Big Ben. Sadly, it was not the most shameful or disturbing thing to happen in London in recent days. Joining me now to discuss is writer and presenter Connor Tomlinson. Connor, first, tell me about how a genocidal message from the river to the sea was permitted to be projected onto Big Ben.
Well, the Met Police, Rita, have declared this not a crime. If this were for any other nation or a message in support of the indigenous British population, I have no doubt they would have already apprehended the person that did this. The important factor about this is that this was done right the night before the ceasefire vote that had been pushed forward into Parliament. Now, there are all sorts of political shenanigans about that, But for a condensed version, the Scottish National Party, who is run by Humza Yousaf up in Scotland, who himself has Palestinian family, have proposed an unconditional ceasefire motion in Parliament on an opposition day. This is a day granted to them that lets them act as if they are the dominant opposition party. And the Speaker smuggled in, and the Speaker being a former Labour Party MP, a Labour motion on a day where it wasn't meant to be for a conditional ceasefire. This caused all sorts of uproar, with Tory MPs walking out, Tory and SNP MPs calling for the Speaker to step down, even the House Clerk saying the Speaker bucked constitutional norms to get this through. And the Labour motion was passed through, but now there's going to be another SNP vote. All of this, the least interesting thing about this, actually, is the fact that the parliamentary procedure is partisan. The most important feature is that a violent mob of people gathering outside Parliament, who have gathered in London every Saturday since the October the 7th massacre, have prayed outside Downing Street in support of Hamas, are now dictating policy in this country because MPs who have imported them here and who have put the British public at risk for decades are suddenly feeling the heat as to the problem that they have created. And now the political agenda is set by the threat of mob violence in my country.
Well, this is precisely what Suella Braverman was talking about, and frankly, I don't understand why she isn't challenging for the Tory leadership, and people deserve a real choice at the coming election. But she said that Islamists hold this disproportionate, disturbing amount of power in modern Britain. How has this come about? Because we are talking about a relatively small group in numbers, and yet they've got parliamentarians scared. You've got the Speaker worried about parliamentarians' lives being in jeopardy. You've got MPs getting up and saying they felt safer in Israel than they feel in London. From afar, try to explain to me what is happening in your country.
MPs are right to be worried. We've had Stephen Timms in 2010, who was stabbed by an Islamist. We had Sir David Amess murdered by an Islamist in 2021. We had Mike Freer MP, that I discussed with you last time I was here, whose office was firebombed after being repeatedly threatened by the same Islamist who stabbed and murdered his colleague, Sir David Amess. Problem is, none of the MPs will actually name this threat, not even Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who says that he's afraid of MPs being threatened, but then blames the nebulous far right. One MP who was murdered by a schizophrenic neo-Nazi, Joe Cox, many years ago, but he won't name the issue either. Instead, when an MP names the issue, namely former Deputy Party Chairman Lee Anderson, a presenter on GB News in the UK, kind of our equivalent to Sky News Australia, when he says that Sadiq Khan in London, who has overseen permissive policing with the Met Police, who has stopped, stop and search, who throughout his career has actually defended Islamists when he was a practicing lawyer, has, quote, given London over to his Islamist mates, the Conservative Party suspend Lee Anderson because Sadiq Khan calls him a racist. Now, just to prove the point here, Sadiq Khan defended the only man prosecuted for the 9/11 attacks. And the only reason he didn't meet this man, he met his mother, is because even though the man wrote to meet Sadiq Khan by name, it was blocked by a judge. He's also been at many conferences with the people that trained the 7/7 bombers, with people that have been the mastermind behind the 1993 World Trade Center attack. Sadiq Khan has routinely surrounded himself with Islamists. His brother-in-law, his ex-brother-in-law, went to Islamist rallies in London at the time that he was married to Sadiq Khan's sister. So for Lee Anderson to say this is not an unfair assessment, but the Conservative Party kicked him out anyway. I can only assume the Conservative Party actually want their MPs to be threatened by the people they've imported here.
It is astonishing to see what's happening in the UK. Sadiq Khan and his supporters would argue that he has been outspoken about the evils of anti-Semitism, and he has moderated his views perhaps from when he was a representative of an Islamic association. But the reality remains that, Connor, I've got people in London saying that as Jews, they don't feel safe going out on weekends during daylight hours when these marches are happening, because they're worried that if they're identified as Jewish, that they're going to be in peril. I mean, again, it's astonishing to me that that could be happening in 2024.
I don't blame them. This week, Tower Bridge was shut down by a series of pro-Palestinian agitators. They've been letting off fireworks towards the police. They've been getting in scuffles. The arrests have been pitiful. They've been defacing war memorials. They've been chanting all sorts of things that there were even placards that were suggesting that the Jews were akin to the Nazis and also that the Holocaust didn't go far enough. I mean, the Met Police is unilaterally cracking down on the phantom threat of the far right. Prevent, which is meant to be the anti-extremism wing of the government that's meant to be cracking down on Islamic terror, is prescribing people on there and saying that they encourage terrorism, like Douglas Murray, a regular contributor to this program, while completely reticencing the threat that Islamic extremism poses to London. I'm not surprised you've got people contacting you, Rita, because I've lived in London all my life, and frankly, it doesn't feel like my home anymore. The world on my doorstep has changed without my consent, and now I genuinely don't know how to fix it because zero parties, not the alternatives, not the big two, are proposing anything like what needs to be done.
Now, we are seeing increasingly this anti-Israeli mob, and that's what they are. I know they're quite often called pro-Palestinian protesters, but they're very much anti-Israeli, and they're feeling emboldened to intimidate people going about their business. Let's have a look at how a mob turned up to a Tory fundraising dinner. Have a look.
So we've just found out that there are Zionist supporters in a local restaurant in Stoke-on-Trent. We've got the share of Stoke-on-Trent here.
So these are the guys that should be ashamed. These are the Zionist supporting guys here. You've got no backbone, and you guys are child killers and genocidal guys, all of you. I beg your pardon. Yes, I know this doctor here very well. You guys have no backbone. You are child murderers, and you are obsessive compulsive freaks controlling body. You all are part of a genocide. You are all a part of. I can point at you. Is it illegal? Take it like a man. Push hard. There shouldn't be video. There shouldn't be video.
You know what they're doing there? They're making ordinary law-abiding citizens afraid to gather. They're making people too intimidated to go to a fundraising dinner or to go to a synagogue or to show signs of their Jewishness. And in that particular instance, the people there weren't even necessarily Jewish. They just were called supporters of Israel, supporters of Zionism, and so they were ripe for abuse. What are the police doing to protect ordinary people who are just trying to go about their business?
Well, much like with the grooming gangs, frankly, the police are doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. There are 3 unnamed MPs who have since got former SAS members as taxpayer-funded bodyguards to protect them. We don't know who they are. I would assume that they're in highly Islamicized constituencies because that's who is perpetrating this. We've seen this happen at multiple fundraising dinners now, mainly with the Labour Party as well. Annalise Dodds, Shadow Women and Equalities Minister, why that position exists, I have no idea, who recently said after Lee Anderson was ousted that Suella Braverman and Liz Truss should be thrown out too for anti-Islamic conspiracy theories, was also petitioned by pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas protesters, agitators at a fundraising dinner at Oxford. The deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, came within a hair of having a pro-Palestinian protester actually lay their hands on her at a fundraising dinner because security didn't step in. So the high trust society that we did formerly have with constituency surgeries where constituents could come up and question their MPs and be friendly, and that is deteriorating rapidly. Diversity is seemingly not our strength when you introduce all sorts of hostile, imperial, foreign agitating ideologies and persons into our civilization. And if I might just say one last thing, it's not just that it's anti-Israeli, because I'm not Jewish. I have no more allegiance to Israel than I do to Iceland, other than the fact that I hope to see them crush Hamas for the massacre on October the 7th. What they also are is anti-English. They are sitting up in my country, many of them on social housing. 47% of social housing in this country goes to foreigners. They're projecting genocidal slogans on my national monuments. And they, like groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which are now prescribed, are saying they want to subsume England to a global caliphate. So anyone who's concerned about both anti-Semitism and just the health of my country should be advocating for kicking these people out forthwith.
Well, we saw in France just in the past week a preacher who made anti-French comments attacking the French state. He was deported within 24 hours. They do not mess around there, but it seems to be a very different philosophy in the UK at the moment. Connor Tomlinson, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it from me tonight. I'll see you at 11 tomorrow night. Don't go anywhere. News Night is up next. Good night.